Welcome to Monday through Friday, Cellular Agriculture for a Pandemic-Free Future. My name is George Ortega, and this is episode number 50, our Jubilee episode. I'm recording this on Monday, September 14th at 6:54 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'm feeling kind of like surreal today. And I'm feeling kind of like that, hey, humanity's had a nice kind of like run. We've gotten to the point where we've got these computers that are a lot smarter than we are in a lot of ways. And it may just be time for, in the past, there have been like mass extinctions, there have been, declines in civilization. They could have been, it's a speculation, but it's makes sense that they could have been related to immorality, at least in terms of humans. For example, the collapse of the Roman civilization, they were as entertainment, they were sending people to fight with lions in these arenas. That's not much different than how we were treating these farm animals. So, yeah, it could be that this is, we're on a downward decline, and, it's not going to be fast. It's not like an asteroid just hit us and, we're gone, or there's this caldera, I think it's called, in Yellowstone Park. It's this giant super volcano that, like, if it would blow, then I guess that would, like, extinct a lot of people really quickly. I don't think it's going to be like that. It's going to be a slow decline, kind of like getting older. You get older year after year, decade after decade, and you just you slow down, you function, And that's that's my best guess at what's going on, because it is surreal. You've got this pandemic, that's shut everything down. It's killing a lot of people, just bankrupting businesses, really wreaking havoc on us, right? And nobody's saying, why did this happen? Oh, do you think it's maybe the farming of animals? You think that maybe, this system we have of food production, is the cause of this. Or maybe, you wonder, people could be saying, well, this is pretty, disruptive. Let's say we kind of figure out how to not allow it to happen again. But that's not happening. 50 episodes later, that is not happening. And one of my main fields is psychology. I haven't researched the death instinct much. That's one of Freud's postulations. We have a life instinct and a death instinct. And I guess there's a part of us, I imagine, that wants to be dead, that, looks at life and after 30, 40, 50 years saying, well, it's not all that's cracked up to be, then looking forward to whatever comes next. So maybe that's playing out. Maybe, people are collectively, individually thinking themselves, yeah, all right, it's time for the next show. I don't know. But the reality is that nobody's talking about preventing the next pandemic. And I don't, I've suggested that that perhaps this is too early to expect that. Perhaps everybody's too consumed with what's going on to think of the future. I can't buy that. For example, if a region of the country has a power outage, like we just had one recently, and people go without power, right? What do? They buy a generator. They take measures to prevent, the inconveniences, whatever, that happened during this last one. So you think that, I don't know, maybe the difference is that that's kind of like an individual act. You just go to the store and buy one, whereas this is more of a mass, collective, global initiative that we basically have to have to undertake. And I mean, like our leaders are wusses. Our leaders, just like they are not leaders, you know, Republicans, Democrats. I mean, they're just like, you know, how we elect these people is beyond me. What I can't explain. I think it was probably better before there was TV and radio, especially TV, because what happens is a lot of times the more quote unquote attractive of the candidates will win, you know. And what is this, a beauty contest? I mean, like we don't want people to look good while they're up in Congress doing nothing, whatever. We want them to do stuff. So, and then, you know, yeah, what goes on in politics, again, it's kind of like they equate it with sausage making. You don't want to know. Like one thing I learned some time ago, like your average senator, you think he's like, you know, in Washington, just like working on your stuff all the time, right? No, I think I once read like 2/3 of the time these senators are in their office, they're making phone calls to solicit funds, you know, fundraising calls for the next campaign, you know, 2/3. I mean, even if it were just half or a third, that's way too much. All right. I should probably get on with the show. All right. Maybe you're not scared enough for yourself or your family, for whatever. Maybe this is like, maybe you're thinking, you know, we'll just get back to normal and then life will be back to normal. Now, you know, if you've been reading the news, you've been reading that the Arctic ice shelf is closer to breaking off and melting, which would create a 10-foot rise in sea level. And that's it, you know, 10-foot rise in sea level, the whole eastern seaboard is gone. I mean, like 80% of civilization is congregated, amassed on the shores of these continents. So 10 feet of, you know, again, all these buildings we built, all these cities we built along the shores, they're gone. They're gone. And like, so anyway, but apparently, you know, that's a few decades away, I guess, and that doesn't scare people. So let's see if we can scare people with stuff that is more imminent. And let's see, do I have it? Oh, wait a minute, I gotta like, all right, I'm gonna have to find the file because I don't see it here. Let me just, I mean, if I'm gonna share, basically I wanna share that, that screen where I created this table. Here we go. Number of epidemics by millennium, by century, by all this stuff. So, okay. Okay, now here's, so look, I've got it up here. And now let me share my screen so you can see it. And again, like for the audio version, I'll be talking about it. I'll just explain what and I'm gonna try to present it in some other way, because like I thought I presented it in a very convincing way the last 3-4 times, but apparently not. All right, let me share the screen. And so this is it. It's a number of epidemics by millennium, century, decade, and year. And the source is Wikipedia, list of epidemics. If you Google wiki and list of epidemics, you'll get right to the page that I got this from. Now, naturally, they don't have it in table form like I did here, but you'll see that, you know, you want to check this. So here's the thing. All right, the first millennium of the Common Era, we had 8 epidemics. Okay, now that's 1,000 years. Okay, 1,000 years, we have 8 of them. 10 years, the first 10 years of 2000s, you know, the 2K millennium, whatever, we've got 42. That's 5 times over, you know, 5 times as many as in a whole 1,000 years. I mean, or if you want to, like, you know, the last century, you know, the 1900s to this 2000s, we had 40. Okay, again, this first decade of the 2000s, we had 42, we had more. All right, that should tell you everything. I'm sorry. These epidemics are getting more, I'm going to stop sharing, are getting much more frequent. And you know, I mean, I've explained this before. It's basically, we've got 4 billion airline flights every year going to every continent. You know, some of the countries who really did effective lockdowns, you know, initially, you know, when they were called upon to do so, when this first got started and they were really safe. Well, now what's happening is they're experiencing, I guess, a second wave. They opened up their airports to people from other countries, and all of a sudden, you know, you've got the cases ramping up again. So, so yeah, I mean, if, maybe people like this. Maybe a lot of people, you know, our work environment, you know, like people work more today than they used to work, let's say 5,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. And back then, you know, people worked maybe 4 or 5 hours a day. And that was like during like planting or harvest, you know. But a lot of people work a lot, and maybe people, you know, subconsciously really enjoy this. Get a lot more time to spend with their kids or something. I mean, I don't know. I gotta like close this window because there's some noise out there. How do you explain? I mean, you know, it's a little easier to explain this climate change thing. I mean, like, it's kind of counterintuitive to believe that you know, what we do affects the climate, you know. Yeah, so we trust the scientists, and then they show us the data, the hockey stick graph, and all this, you know, all this evidence that, yeah, we are absolutely doing that. However unlikely that seems. But with this, you know, so people aren't afraid of climate change, unfortunately, because that, you know, there goes your kids and your grandkids and your great grandkids' future. You know, I mean, what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to invent happiness pills. I'm serious. In other words, like, as more and more deprivation happens, as, you know, through the climate, just like, you know, I mean, I'm not even going to like detail it because yeah, it's going to be difficult. But, you know, if they can develop these pills, they're kind of like antidepressants, but they work not on people who are depressed, but people who are just like, you know, suffering this distancing and you know, economic shutdown and stuff. I mean, future pandemics, whatever. So if they develop one of those, and yeah, civilization is crumbling and decline and stuff, but everybody's happy. And so, like, you know, who can complain, right? I mean, like, we're hedonic creatures. We seek pleasure, avoid pain. That's our fundamental motivation. Our motivation really isn't to be alive. You know, well, it is to a certain extent, but the reason we want to be alive is because we predict that brings about a certain amount of pleasure, right? I mean, anyway. So, all right, let me try again, you know, because maybe I haven't explained it well enough, I guess. But this pandemic, you know, is zoonotic, meaning it comes from animals. And so basically, you know, while this one came from a wet market in China, there are actually, incidentally, about 8 wet markets in New York City. I don't know if they've closed them. I hope they closed them. There were, you know, some time ago. But the important thing is, like, these wet markets are not very different than factory farms. They may actually might be more sanitary. You know, in wet markets, you have these live animals in cages, right? Which is what you have, for example, with egg-laying hens. With egg-laying hens, you've got battery cages, and they're stacked on top of each other. And there are about maybe 4 or 5 chickens per cage. They're crammed in so closely that the chickens cannot even spread their wings. Okay, that's beyond horrible. But what makes it even more horrible is that because they're stacked on top of each other, the chickens on top are urinating and defecating on the chickens on the bottom. Okay, and that's why we have to pump these animals with antibiotics. 80% of the antibiotics we use are not used on humans. They're used on these animals because the conditions are so unsanitary. And, you know, people have said that it's not just these viruses, pandemics, that are posing a growing and major threat to our lifestyle, our civilization. It's antibiotic resistance. If you've had an operation especially major operation, you're more likely than not, you would have been given antibiotics because, you know, cutting a person open, that exposes the person to a lot of bacteria. And so that we've, you know, these antibiotics have been lifesavers. I mean, they've been amazing, you know, penicillin. But what's happening is, like, because we're pumping so many antibiotics into these animals, again, 80% of what we create here in the United States, the bacteria are growing resistant to our antibiotics. So our antibiotics are no longer working. So yeah, this, you know, the factory farm system, and in addition, I mean, like, factory farms contribute about almost 15% of the greenhouse gases that are fueling climate change. And they use vast amounts of water. You wouldn't believe how many gallons of water it takes, like to have a gallon of milk or a pound of beef. I mean, gallons and gallons and gallons of water. And same with land use. I think, again, I've got some figures somewhere, but like, just the land use, the pollution, you know, these cows and these animals pollute stuff. And, you know, anyway, so it's a really, really cruel, stupid system. I mean, fine, it may have been necessary decades ago. Probably not. I mean, like, decades ago, we understood that eating meat was not compulsory. It's not necessary to human health. And, you know, Serena Williams, I think did she just win another grand tournament? I mean, she's a vegan. I mean, this woman is, like, you know, she's fit. There's a lot of vegans that are really fit. And, you know, I've been a vegan for 15 years. I mean, basically, without the cholesterol, the saturated fat and stuff, you're healthier, you know? But the problem is, yeah, we're not going to all go vegan. And so what do we do? It's hard to know what to say, you know? I mean, like, what do you say? Well, after 50 shows, I think I've said it, but I'm going to keep, you know, this is a challenge. It's a challenge to like, you know, to see if I can come up with a magic bullet, you know. I don't know, that's a weird term, isn't it? That's the kind of civilization we live in. A magic bullet is a good thing. Tell me about it. Yeah, come up with an answer, you know, come up with a way to tell you this, that you will listen and talk to your politicians, and, you know, maybe you have a friend who is a journalist, you know, talk to your friends about it. And maybe, you know, we can, again, $50 billion, that's all it takes. You know, we've already spent 2-3 trillion, the United States alone, forget the rest of the world, on this pandemic. Okay, again, you know, I'm saying this stuff over and over because, you know, you need to hear it over and over, I guess. The Congressional Budget Office in May, before this June-July surge, predicted that we would be spending about $8 trillion when this is all said and done on, you know, repairing the economic cost of this pandemic. $8 trillion. So, like, the $50 billion, that it's kind of like a ballpark figure that I came up with, that should be enough to keep us safe from pandemics in 2 or 3 years, amounts to 0.5% of this $8 trillion that we're predicted to spend. I mean, come on. So why aren't the politicians talking about this? That's like, you know, this world is surreal. And, like, you know, this, I'm beginning to kind of like have a surreal attitude about it. I think people want to die. People are tired of living. They're ashamed to say it to their families and their friends and stuff, because it's not such a wonderful kind of thing. But I think people really want to die, you know? I think what happens is, like, you know, maybe like when everybody was poor 200-300 years ago, people had something they thought they wanted to aspire to. Yeah, let's rise up from poverty, get into the middle class, become rich, and then we'd have such amazing lives, right? Well, I think maybe the problem is we've got a lot of rich people, a lot of billionaires, and a lot of them are miserable. A lot of them just are not too happy. So I think people are figuring out, the people who've risen from the poor class to the middle class, and the people who've gone from the middle class to the rich class. I think they're figuring out that no, yeah, there is no magic bullet, so like, I mean, something has to explain it, I mean, and that even doesn't get into the explaining the cruelty. And, I got to say this, I mean, like, one of the reasons I can say this kind of like almost glibly, is because I do not blame us for any of this. I agree with our 4 top scientific minds in the history of science, Isaac Newton, Charles Darwin, Sigmund Freud, and Albert Einstein, who all, coming from 3 different scientific disciplines, physics, biology, psychology, neuroscience, understood that nothing we do is up to us. We don't have a free will. I'm sorry, nothing's up to us. And if you want to understand the simple reason for that is like, it's called causality, cause and effect. For example, you say something, you make a decision, right? That decision has a cause because everything has a cause. That's the principle. It's the law of cause and effect. So if you make a decision that has a cause, well, guess what? That has a cause too. And these causes are always before what they cause, right? So then you've got your decision and a cause to that, and a cause to that, and a cause to that. And these causes are going back in time, cause by cause by cause, until this chain of cause and effect regresses back to before you were born. And theoretically back to the Big Bang and whatever came before that. So when I tell you that you are being so amazingly evil, being complicit, paying people to torture, literally torture. You can't, torture is the right word. So many animals, 70 billion animals a year. When I say you're amazingly evil for doing that, I don't want you to blame yourself. Because again, it's not your fault. You're born into this world where I guess, it must be all right. Everybody's doing it, right? But, if you've lived in the world long enough, you've come to understand that free will or not, we still get rewarded when we do good and punished when we don't. And that's the problem, I mean, like we had slaves here, for hundreds of years. That was horrible, and finally we woke up and like some Quakers in Pennsylvania, a small group of Quakers finally said enough. And they just basically launched the abolitionist movement, and then the Church of England, some group, joined them. And then we had this movement and we ended it. But that was a horrible system that we maintained for hundreds of years. And so this is a system that hasn't been hundreds of years, but perhaps 150, I mean, certainly decades, the decades of the 1900s. How can, we humans like to consider ourselves good people, but how can we seriously consider ourselves good people when we take part in this? I don't include me in this, I'm not included. It's not that I'm perfect, I've got my faults and stuff, but I stopped eating meat and fish and dairy 15 years ago because I understood what was going on. I've been a vegetarian since '92, so. Because I mean, all it takes is a little imagination. I mean, like, these animals are sentient. How many people own cats and dogs and birds? And how, if you own a cat, and dog, or bird, I mean, you absolutely understand that they feel good and then they suffer. They feel pleasure, they feel pain. So then, like, most people don't realize it, but pigs are actually smarter than dogs. So you have to understand that if dogs can feel a lot of pain, and they can, then pigs obviously can feel as much pain. So like, you're not getting this, you don't care, it's not your fault, but you're going to pay the price. Your kids are going to pay the price, and your kids are going to pay the price because that's the way nature works. That's the way God works. I mean, like, again, we could surprise ourselves. We could turn all this around. We could summon up our conscience and wake up and start, demanding that our leaders address this and address climate change. But considering that we just elected Trump, as our president, this deeply vile, disturbed, psychopathic man, I mean, You really think we're going to start doing the right thing? I mean, half the country, 40% of women, after all that he said about women, 40% of women voted for this guy. No, we were like, so, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, if we're unwilling to do what we need to do to protect ourselves from future pandemics, and cellular agriculture, creating these meats in labs where it's completely sanitary would make us 99+% pandemic risk free. If we can't do that, if we won't do that, then yeah, it's a civilization, a global civilization in decline. It's not an empire, it's not a country, it's an entire civilization. Again, some of these viruses, these pandemics can be 40 times as lethal as this one. And so it's a matter of time. And so yeah, so then I guess we have to accept it and then just then take the big picture. It's been nice, humanity's been around for a while, but look at the scheme of things. I mean, like the 14 billion years for this universe, and life, well, life has been around for, billions of years, I guess. But intelligent life, I mean, I don't know if we can call us intelligent, but we kind of believe we are. Advanced life, modern life hasn't been around all that much. Again, the human beings were, 30,000 years. So it's just, it is something of grass. I don't know. It's like, it's a flicker in time. Who knows? All right. So anyway, do you like your kids? Do you have grandkids? Do you like your grandkids? Because if you like them, you will start talking about this. You will begin to care. If you don't, if you don't care what happens to them, well, yeah, don't do anything. And I guarantee you that you will be handing them a living hell, because that's, people, because what happens is these pandemics destroy economies. When economies are destroyed, people fight for diminishing resources. So you have what, another 2, 3, 4 world wars, and all right. Anyway, I hope you're getting the message here, because again, after 50 episodes, all right, I'm under a minute. So catch this every Monday through Friday on White Plains Community Media, channel 76 with Optimum, 45 with Verizon. The episodes are also on YouTube in video and on iTunes and Spotify as an audio version. So again, talk to people. I mean, look up cellular agriculture, clean meat. Get this book is amazing. This book will tell you everything about it. It's called Clean Meat by a guy named Paul Shapiro. He just goes through the entire history of this industry that just started in 2013. It's brand new. All right, well, thanks for watching, and God willing, I shall see you tomorrow.